Hello. Understand and be understood by Ian Bond. Very, very useful class. Okay. Think. When I speak, just think. The curtains stopped swaying. The water stopped moving like angry waves from side to side in the flower vase. The mother stopped screaming at the top of her voice for her kid to get out of the bathroom. The dog stopped barking at the walls. Everything was still again. Normality returned as everyone realized that it was just a strong tremor and there was nothing to worry about. How many times had they gone through the same scene, living on the 5th floor? Too many times. It was time to move house. They couldn't go through this time and time again. Relax, everyone. I'm just demonstrating how most fiction usually starts in English. As much as I would love to make life easy for you and set a scene and start with John and Sandra were in their house with their 5-year-old son and their dog when suddenly there was an earth tremor. Unfortunately, this is never going to happen. I'm always shouting subject, verb, complement in class for your benefit. I want people to understand what you say when you open your mouth. But this is never going to be reciprocated. They are never going to do it for you. Quite simply, native English speakers have no idea how to speak clearly. Modern adult authors will not start a story with once upon a time. My father famously started every story in the middle, and we would sit in the dining table making faces at each other and shrugging our shoulders until someone eventually worked out what he was talking about. He thought that everyone had his knowledge and was thinking what he was thinking. So he just talked as though we were involved in his world. To be fair, he did this all day at work, and that is how they spoke to each other. They all knew the problem, so they only talked about the solutions. Telling the whole story just wasted time for him. The world of movies has gone full circle over the last 50 years. Originally, a film started by showing you the main characters and letting the story develop around those characters. Then sometime in the 70s or 80s, they started making the beginnings of the films more mysterious. And we spent 20 minutes confused or guessing what the story was about. Thankfully, films have gone back to being logical, once upon a time stories again. Thank God. There is a simple trick to combat this form of writing. Again, I'm always telling students to see the story in their heads. If I say these words, my name is Ian. Ian is standing naked in the street in front of his house. You should be able to conjure up, imagine that image. Please give me a large penis and a flat stomach. Thank you. This is true for all sentences and all situations. So when a story starts in this way, you can treat each sentence like a piece of puzzle, putting faces and colours and objects into the picture as you read them. You build the image. Do you understand the idea? Okay. Let's see if we can do this together. I am going to describe a scene using very simple sentences, and I want you to construct the scene as we go along, changing the picture as you get more and more information. Hopefully, if I do my job right, you will be able to see the picture, the scene, clearly, and everyone who reads my story will start from the same place. Shall we try it? Okay. Pay attention. See what I am saying? The people never stopped looking at me. Even when it started to rain, they continued to look. I hadn't had a shave for a couple of weeks, but my clothes were clean. I couldn't move. I wanted to move, but my legs wouldn't work. My wheelchair was lying on its side and was too far from me. I had managed to sit up, but I was still on the cold, wet floor. How could people be so cruel? They were treating me like a homeless person, just ignoring me. I could almost understand their behaviour if I was in some dirty back street, but I wasn't. I was sitting on the main steps directly in front of... Now, you should have an image in your head, and you should be poised to add the final piece of the puzzle and have the perfect image in your head. And you should also be able to change that image as soon as you hear the last word of that sentence. You must be flexible, and you must be able to picture the scene so that the author can continue with the story. He has led you perfectly to this image, so he's not going to explain it again. So, the last sentence. I was sitting on the main steps in front of the governor's building, the Hotel Mokowa. Ready to change your image? It's the Taj Mahal in India. So all of your image in front of the Taj Mahal. So you see how this works. But there's a problem, because our memory is shit in our second language. For me too. It's terrible. It's really difficult to hold a memory in your second language. Saying one sentence and remembering the details from the previous sentence is one of the most difficult things to do. We can do it easily in our first language, but quite simply, we don't have that temporary folder when we are not yet bilingual. It does happen in time and with practice, but it's not something most students can do at first. You see, in these classes, I know your level and how your brains work, and I can lead you from one theme to another, provided that I make connections all along the way. I make sure you are holding on to the conversation with one hand before using the other hand to go forward. If I asked you now how this essay started, I'm guessing that most of you would need to look at the other side of this piece of paper or rewind this video and remind yourselves. Don't look. I will help you. It started with me describing an earth tremor. Remember that? But you didn't remember it. You remember it now. So, how can you develop your temporary folder? Well, in just the same way as how we learn pronunciation and intonation, etc. We have to educate our brains. We tell the brain that we need that folder, and we do that by pushing it and testing it until eventually it stops resisting us and opens the folder. It's a wonderful moment when that happens. You feel bilingual and words just pop into your head without hunting for them and without hesitation. The shopping game. That's the best way I know to get this folder opened quickly in your brains. You can play this alone or with a partner or in groups, because however many people play, you can never relax. You have to store every item in your brain and recall it and remember it when it is your turn. The story is simple. I went to the corner shop and I bought some sugar. And then the next person says, I went to the corner shop and I bought some sugar and a newspaper. And the next person says, I went to the corner shop and I bought some sugar, a newspaper, and a Sharpie. Try it. You can play it alone. Another way that you can do this is by recalling a scene from your past. To recall is like to remember. It's to remember again. We're going to borrow information from a file which already exists in your brains, your memory. Think of an important moment in your life which produces images and emotions. Then put this event into your temporary folder and pull the information out in English. Maybe you use the day you left school or your 15th birthday party, a big event. Just close your eyes and describe the events in English. Close your eyes and describe this room where you are now. Just close your eyes. You have the memory because you are sitting there. But describe it in English. Tell us who is sitting next to whom in your house, who sleeps in which room, and which objects are in your room. Do all of this in English. Your memory has images which don't need words. If we could put your visual thoughts on a video beam, then everyone in the world could narrate the scene in any language you ask for. So take advantage of this file and keep telling your brain how much you need that English folder. See and speak, see and speak, see and speak. Now, let's get back to normality. Let's be honest. Some people just don't like reading for fun, and some people only watch TV, and that's all they do. Fiction and novels and arty words are not everyone's favourite thing. Most people know how to read, but this doesn't mean that they enjoy it. Reading is a necessity of life. Reading ingredients on packets, reading cooking instructions, reading warnings and official notices. The list is endless. The English you learn in the classroom is perfect for normal life. With a bit of vocabulary, you could survive in Texas or Manchester or in Canada, wherever. For some reason, when we take English exams, we are expected to read and write fiction and imagine fictitious situations. I went to a school reserved for the top 2% of students in England. Theoretically, we were the brainiest, most intelligent of the 11-year-olds, based on an exam we took at middle school. However, somehow, I never got interested in reading books. My first book they gave me was The Hobbit, the famous book The Hobbit, and I read 2 pages. I was completely lost. My sister bought me a book called Kon-Tiki and I for my 12th birthday, and I still haven't read it. It was just too complicated and boring for my brain. This is when I learned the art of bullshit. In English literature classes, we were told to read 5 chapters before the next class. I never even took the books home. As I walked to class, I would find keywords in each chapter like fire, murder, or divorce. And that was my homework done. Then, if somehow I got a question in the class like, why was Angela angry with Robert? I would choose one of my keywords and say something like, teacher, I think it was because of the fire. So even though it was the wrong answer, the teacher thought I had read the book. Don't you do this. I read my first book from beginning to end when I was 30 years old. I was sitting on a beach in Lanzarote in the Canary Islands with my brother and his wife, and I was just sitting there looking at the ocean while they were reading. Lindsay, my sister-in-law, finished her book and offered it to me, and, well, I had nothing better to do. I read the book in 3 days. I read it at breakfast, at lunch, on the beach, in bed, and I nearly finished my second book by the time the 1-week holiday had finished. What was different? Why did I read? The author was John Grisham. For those of you who have never heard of John Grisham, he is the world's best-selling author. People buy and share his books in all countries and in all languages because his way of writing is so easy to understand. He is my ideal author because he's the most perfect example of subject-verb complement that you can imagine. He makes every scene clear before he starts any action, and you know 100% who is talking during every dialogue. If you find my silly stories easy to understand, then you can thank John Grisham. He inspired me. So anytime you pick up a book and the first chapter confuses you or you have no idea what they are talking about, don't panic and don't blame yourself or criticize yourself too much. Some of us just don't like that form of storytelling. Some of us want things told to us in clear and concise words because the pleasure for us is the images that those words create and not the lexicon or the vocabulary of the author or his skill at being mysterious. So, to end, here is another scene for you to picture in your head. Now concentrate. The words were ending on the page. The teacher stood up and went over to the kitchen. He started to make some noises, metallic noises. He was searching through his knives, selecting a special knife. Why was he looking for a knife at this time? The students started to feel uncomfortable. Was he being serious or was he being sinister? He turned around and he had the longest knife in his hand. He looked at the students. Then he looked at one boy in particular, and then he spoke. Does anyone want cake? Have a good day.